Well, I think one of the interesting questions that was put to us is, what do we remember about the early years and how did we get from point A to point B? And to be perfectly frank, our father started with his university career in 1941 as a junior assistant soil chemist at the Citrus Experiment Station in Riverside, California, before it was even a campus of the University of California. And I was born in 44. Liz was born in 47.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to put ages.
No, that's
She's
okay.
a young,
We're comfortable with our age.
Yes, absolutely. But the reality of life is that we would be up in Riverside when we lived in Riverside until about 1955, and so we would, my mother would bring us down to San Clemente in the summertime, and so coming down through the Santa Ana Canyon, down through Orange County, which at that time was Orange County. There were lots of oranges, and we would come down and proceed on down to San Clemente. Liz and my younger brother would be there. I played Little League Baseball up in Riverside, so would only come down on the weekends. But my dad served he was a soil chemist and served the citrus industry, basically extending from Limonera, Ventura in the north all the way to San Diego and east. And he, as a soil chemist, he did a lot to deal with the soil reclamation of what is now the Imperial and Coachella valleys and all down along the Blythe, and transforming those what at the time were non-arable lands into arable lands, which have become mega economic engines. But all of that said, we were familiar with what was largely a barren, either barren or agricultural landscape that extended from Riverside to San Clemente as young ones. I mean, I learned to body surf at the San Clemente Pier with my mother. We can recall the early years here. There was in the early 1950s, there was the World Boy Scout Jamboree, which is why Jamboree Road is so reflected here now today in reflection of a remembrance of the Boy Scout Jamboree, etc. So we had some familiarity of what was largely an agrarian landscape. And in December of 1961, we always went to Tucson, Arizona, from whence my sister just returned, which was the homestead of my mother, our mother. And we came back from Tucson, Arizona, and normally we would stay in Riverside with friends and then venture north the next day to back to Berkeley. And in this particular instance, my dad said, well, we're going to take a side trip. That wasn't exactly exciting because of the basic fact that would make it longer, okay? But we came down again and came up on this one late December day to the hills, just right above where we are right now. And we came through a cattle gate and came down through on a dirt path and looked out across the Santa Ana Valley from the hills right here, and it was overcast, etc. And we all got out of the car, and my dad turned to us and said, hey, what do you think about moving here?
And I'll pick up the story now.
Yeah, go.
I really will. I'll pick up the story because, as Daniel has said, we got out of the car and my father and mother and the three of us kids stood there, and Papa looked out over the fields, and as I've said in other times, there was nothing here. It was grazing land. There were cattle off to one side and cattle off to another side, and the Aldrich family standing in between those cattle. And Papa said, as Daniel said, what do you think about moving here? And that, for a almost 16-year-old, fell like a lead balloon because there was nothing here, nothing. And so Papa stood here, and he turned to my mother and actually turned to all of us after he had asked the question, and he said, can you see it? Well, what can you see? And you knew that he saw something here that none of us, except probably my mother, knew what he was looking out across those hills and seeing, because he had been, at that point, it was revealed to us that he'd been approached by the university, and specifically by, at that time, President Clark Kerr, to think about this opportunity, which would be to come and be the inaugural chancellor for this campus that was going to be the University of California at Irvine.